friends. Today's close to my heart card is a hydrangea handmade card. And what's interesting about this card, it features the hibiscus image and a hanging basket, and I, through the miracle of Cricut Design Space, turned a hibiscus into a hydrangea. And here is the products that we used. I used thistle cardstock for the base of the flower bouquet. I used thistle hibiscus leaves, and there's detailed instructions on my website, margaritasmadness.com, and there's a link below that shows you exactly, you can link into the post that shows you how to create this. This is the largest petal, in the hibiscus flower, and I knocked it down to 3/4 of an inch. And you're going to need about 50 of these. So this is a project that takes some time, but it is very pretty when it's done. So you're going to take the hibiscus flower, make 50 of these petals, and you're going to turn it into a hydrangea plant. I also used from the Flower Market image cartridge, this hanging basket, and that's also where the hibiscus came from. And this is done in saddle. I used the stamp set from the Flower Market cartridge, and the stamp I used for this is Beauty is All Around. I used Gypsy ink, and I think Gypsy has now been discontinued, so there's another new bright purple one, but Gypsy works really well. I used this wonderful, they're yellowy stars for the center of the flower. I used copper embossing powder to emboss the hanging basket, the ropey part, to give it some shine and some shimmer. And then I used Elmer's glue. Now I don't normally use Elmer's glue, but once we start putting this together, you'll see why I chose this glue, because we're going to be attaching about 50 of these little flowers to the thistle flower base. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our card base, and that is with white daisy cardstock, and that's going to be, here's the white daisy cardstock. It's going to be 6.5 high by 5 wide, so it's 10 by 6.5, and then you're going to attach everything to it. The next thing you're going to cut out in saddle is this Flower Market hanging basket image, and this one is cut at 4 3/4 high by 3.3 wide, cuts in 2 pieces, and they're exactly the same size. The next thing you're going to cut out is this base, and this is the hydrangea base, and this hydrangea base is cut from 1 piece of thistle, and I cut it, let me check my dimensions here. I cut this at 3.5 wide by 2.5 height, and you don't really need to do that, but when I started attaching the petals to give me a sense of where I'm going and how large I want it, I found it was much easier to attach it to the base, and then when I'm almost finished, I attach the base to the hanging basket. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to emboss this hanging basket, the ropey part, with the copper. I used copper embossing powder so that when you put the brown on top, the copper on top of the brown, it gives it a nice sheen. So I'll be right back after I emboss the ropey part of the basket. Okay, so now I've embossed the hanging rope basket part in copper. You can see the pretty shimmer, and I'm going to attach the base of the rest of the hanging basket to the rope. Okay, so I've attached the two pieces of the hanging basket together, and now I'm going to do the flowers for the plant. Now there should be about 50 of these. They're cut at 3/4 of an inch, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my gypsy ink here, or whatever dark purple you have, and I'm going to color them up a little bit, just the centers, to give them some definition when we start to mold them. So all I did was ink up a little dauber. This part doesn't take long at all, and I'm just going to go through and do the centers, and then I go through and I do the edges like so. It's very simple, very, very simple, and you just cut them through. And when you get them all done, you let them dry a little bit, and then we'll go on to the next. Okay, now the next step is we're going to form these petals into these flowers into a more of a shape rather than have it just flat. And first thing you do to get the paper to be a little bit more flexible, we're going to wet it. Now many people use spritzers and just wet it that way, but because these are so little, I just have a little dish of water here, dip my fingers in. Now I got it wet, as you can see, then I'm going to flip it over so and do the side that doesn't have the ink on it. And I have a 2mm stylus, and I'm simply going to indent, 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 indent. I go around each flower twice to make sure it pulls up. And then I flip it over to the ink side, and in the center I push down. And see, you can see now the difference, and it'll release a little bit as it dries. So there's the flower before we shaped it, and there's the flower after we shaped it, and you can see why we need 50 of them. So again, I wet it a little bit, take the uninked side and indent, 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 indent. I go around each of them twice with a 2mm stylus. Flip it over to the ink side and push hard in the center. And I do that with all 50 of the flowers. So let me do some more, and then we'll be back to do the next step. Okay, the next step now is we're going to add centers to our flowers. I love these. I bought these at Michael's. They're little yellow glittery kind of stars, but if you don't have these, anything yellow, white, you could use glitter, you could use little gemstones, you could even use paper, just to give some accent to the center of the flower. So all I did was, again, this is why I'm using Elmer's glue, I put a dab in because it'll dry clear, and then I took some yellow stars with my little tweezers here and just popped them into the center. Okay, now you really can't see them yet, but you will as it dries. And I've only done a few here because I've already done one whole card, and the longest amount of time to do this card is the petals, the cutting, the shaping, and this part with the stars. The rest of it's not too bad, but that's the time-consuming part. So I'm just going to do a couple more to show you. Again, you just dab a little glue. And it looks like I'm putting a lot of glue in, but I need to do that to hold the stars. And whenever I seem to do this, I seem to miss the center. And that's all you do. So you would do all 50 of these. What I did is I would do them in shifts. So I'd cut some, and then I'd color some, and then I'd bend some. So this card took me quite a long time to do. So let me get the rest of them assembled, and then we'll assemble the entire card. Okay, so now I've gotten the individual flowers ready. The next step is you're going to adhere them to this base for your to make the entire plant, the entire flower. They look more like a hydrangea. They're still kind of damp, so they're not really forming. But I wanted to show you. You start in the center, and you just build around the entire plant flower and go. Just keep going in a circular motion till you get it all done. And then when I was almost done with it, I attached it to the flower base so that I could do right around the edges, right at the flower, it's the hanging plant itself. Again, this is a little bit tricky because it's not completely dry. When I made the original one, I made sure everything was totally dry before I went on to the next step. Okay, so let that dry, and you would keep going around and around and around until you have it done. So once you have all the beautiful little flowers attached, you take the whole thistle piece, attach it to the hanging basket, and then you attach the hanging basket to the card. And so here I have the completed piece. And as I say, I took the thistle base, put it on the hanging basket, and I still had some edges left to do. So I waited till everything was attached before I added the final petals to make the complete look of the flower. So the next thing I'm going to do now is stamp the sentiment, and I used Beauty is All Around. I originally did one in the gypsy ink to match the flowers, but then I decided it really wasn't dark enough to please me, so I'm now going to do it again in black. Okay, so now I've stamped Beauty is All Around on the bottom, and the final step is going to be to add this gem. You can see it at the top where it hooks up here. So now I've added the gem at the top. It says Beauty is All Around. I hope you can see the little sparkles. I thought it was so pretty. So this card took a lot of time, but I think it's really pretty, and I was very happy with the results. I love being able to create flowers with some dimension to them. So thank you for watching my video. Please visit Margarita's Madness for step-by-step complete pictorial instructions on how to do this. Every detail is on there. And for some other project ideas, again, thank you for watching my video, and I hope you'll come back soon.